back to our Empowered podcast with Lilian and Christina.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're going to talk about toxic relationships and
Specifically, how to end a toxic relationship.
oh, I cannot keep them there.
What?
I cannot keep them there.
Well, if it's toxic, you typically don't want to stay in a situation where it's toxic. Although many of us do, and we're going to get to the bottom of it as to why we tend to stay in these relationships.
Yeah, because a lot of times we keep complaining about the toxic relationships and we are the ones who keep it in place.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
something we gain out of complaining but keeping ourselves there.
Yeah.
So let's distinguish that.
Dive in. So, what does a toxic relationship look like? A toxic relationship is a relationship that constantly undermines your sense of well-being, your happiness, and sometimes your safety. And it is characterized by a pattern of emotional harm, disrespect, and manipulation, which can lead to a deterioration of the mental and emotional health. And so what we're about to go into some key signs.
So let's make it simple.
Mhm.
It's a relationship where any one of the parts feels disrespected, manipulated, down, and they don't have the strength to be on their own. They have this codependency experience that they don't see themselves out of that relationship empowered.
Right. Now, I want to express something, and I think it's important that our listeners understand too. It doesn't necessarily take two toxic people to create a toxic relationship or one partner being toxic. Sometimes it's two great individuals that would be perfect harmony with somebody else, but together it's like yin and yang, it's like polar opposites. Because you can take an ingredient that's perfectly healthy and vibrant, but mixing it with another ingredient and it becomes toxic. That would be the case with like C and A, vitamin C and vitamin A. Becomes toxic. There's no harmony in it. So they end up destroying one another.
But then isolated, they're totally cool.
Totally
together
cool.
the problem.
Right. So sometimes a toxic relationship, like if it's lost momentum and it just can't move forward, becomes toxic, stagnant. And what happens in stagnant water? Remember we discussed that?
Create toxicity, but whatever that is.
Yes, life starts to die, right?
Yeah.
The elements within. So
And so what do you need to do for detoxing? Go get a massage. No, I'm just kidding.
hey, massages have saved many relationships, right?
That's true.
You send people get massages.
You know, there's a lady that used to work for me for a short amount of time. She actually teaches couples for how to give massage to each other. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Oh, oh my God.
So you can search online. I forgot her name. I think it's Yasko. And she teaches couple massage for people who are not interested in being professionals, just to enhance their relationship.
You know, that's one way to my heart is through touch.
Oh, yeah?
I love touch and massage, yeah.
All right, so let's go back to toxic
We're on a different episode right now. All right, so go ahead. You can we wrote this down. We wanted to make sure that we gave you some good, solid insight and some recommendations from the experts.
Yeah. So some of the keys include lack of support. So and look, we have a tendency to think toxic relationship as romantic relationship, but I do believe you can have toxic relationships in your environment for work, in your friendships, right? There's also toxic relationship. Like, what is a toxic relationship? A relationship that creates codependency,
yes,
and leaves some of the parts disempowered, right? Like and have you noticed that? Have you had an experience of having like a therapist or a hairdresser or someone like you could not get your hair done with that person anymore, but something happens to you and there's like, oh, I did it again. Why did I come? And there was some feeling of disempowerment.
Wait, you're saying like you don't like in the case of somebody that does your hair, you
Uh-huh.
don't like the way they do your hair
No,
anymore.
the way they are talking about things.
Oh, but they do great
They
work.
go through like
They
do.
have a horrible bedside manner. They do great work.
Right? Like
That happens a lot. Yeah.
that's a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
It's not a romantic one.
Yeah.
What had me to keep myself going to that hairstylist if I'm not happy with the interactions, or that person keeps talking or gossiping about other people,
Yeah.
and I keep myself going over there.
It's because they do damn good work.
Yeah, but then on the other side is it like giving me, so a toxic relationship includes lack of support, feeling inadequate, feeling sabotaged, belittled, right?
Mm-hmm.
It also have this constant feeling of tension and dissatisfaction.
Yes.
So I keep myself in a relationship that I'm satisfied, that I'm
Yeah.
sad, that I'm like, why do I keep that in place, right?
Yeah.
Those are signs.
Those are some signs, and that is a different type of toxicity within the relationship. And sometimes you could be the giver. You could be the one that is doing these like self-sabotage, finding fault. Sometimes when you're in a relationship that you're just no longer feeling content or it's not thriving, you start focusing on your partner and finding all the faults and pointing them out, because you don't have the power to walk away. So you're hoping that they'll walk away. So you just
Mhm.
keep beating them down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, persistent unhappiness. That's a no-brainer, really. Constant tension on arguments and feeling of
But
dissatisfaction.
hold on a sec. The perceived unhappiness is like a no-brainer, right? But
Persistent unhappiness.
unhappiness.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like I experienced some, in my past, the perceived unhappiness wasn't clear that was from my relationship. I had it was my fault. I had it that was something that I did it wrong, that I
That
should.
you weren't happy.
It was
as an
my
individual.
fault. It was my fault, right? So a lot of times the toxicity comes from. I know. We'll talk the whole hour, and I will not have say it. Don't worry. Teach me.
No, you did it.
Toxicity.
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 Yeah, say it 5 times real fast.
The toxic.
But what you're saying is sometimes it's you internalize and it's you,
Yeah.
so it just transfers into the relationship.
Yeah, and that's a sign that the relationship is toxic, because you are that for yourself. You're a guilt. It's your fault. Like, oh, they're doing that. The other person is doing what is doing because it's your fault. It's like that's also part of being in a toxic relationship.
That's the thing about sound relationships that are built on strong foundations. We're all going to have highs and lows, right? Things
Mhm.
happen in our lives. And when you hit that low moment, a good person that is in harmony with you is going to be able to know how to love you through those emotional roller coasters or the bad times in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all going to have that. It doesn't necessarily mean we're in a toxic relationship. We're going to have bad times in our lives where we're just not going to, the energy that we put out is going to be destructive to those closest to us sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. So there's also the part of insults. I think like it's very clear when there is physical harm, with physical unsafety, when there's physical aggression. But I think the most dangerous part is when there is emotional unsafety, emotional belittling. When the other part will make fun of you.
That's abuse.
Yeah.
That's verbal abuse.
And,
emotional abuse.
And a lot of times it doesn't occur that way. And then there's it's very difficult to talk about relationships and toxic relationship, because I don't want to expose anyone in my past, but we all had toxic relationships, and
Yes.
and there was a codependency that I was responsible for it, right?
Yeah.
There was something that I was getting out of me being okay with the situation. So I lost it because I don't want to be
That's
talking
okay.
about.
But as we're going through these points, it just came to mind that, for those of you who kind of tuned into this episode because you feel that you're in a toxic relationship, you might want to watch this multiple times. Grab a notepad and a pen and write some of these things down, because then you're going to do the pro and con list, and that means how many of these issues are currently active in your relationship.
Mhm.
It might help you as an individual to know, wow, I'm in a toxic relationship. Some people already know they are, they just don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Communication breakdown, that's probably the first thing that goes in a toxic relationship. You no longer have the ability to resolve issues or communicate effectively. It's a bantering, it's just like a back and forth thing, and the goal ends up becoming who's right and who's wrong versus resolving issues. So that is key. When you lose communication, everything starts to go downhill.
I think when you lose respect, the communication goes away.
Yeah. Also, a lot of people tend to go silent. They just stop communicating.
Usually men do that.
I was gonna say it, I don't think so. I'm not the one that said it this time.
Well, there's a tendency of men withholding, withdrawing, right? And then women is nagging. And they keep saying, which I see it was true in my case, that when the women stop arguing or stop annoying is because we're done.
Right. So I'm going to backpedal a little bit for those of you who may write these down. Okay, I'm just going to touch on them real quick. So lack of support, feeling belittled, inadequate, or sabotaged instead of feeling uplifted. Persistent unhappiness, constant tension, arguments, feelings of dissatisfaction, communication breakdown, insults, accusations, or complete silence, leaving issues unresolved, and your feelings unheard. We also have control and dominance. One partner dictating who the other can see or what they can do, and how they should think and feel. That's huge.
And it's very interesting because like when you are watching a movie or you watching someone else in a relationship, it's so clear for you that is happening. But when you are in the relationship, it's so difficult to see.
Yeah.
I remember when I was like, it took me, I was in a relationship that was not satisfying, right? So I created the divorce, and he's a good man, so I don't want to have that down. And there was a codependency because I was part of it. But there was something that I was told, and there was complaining that I had that I didn't get from the relationship. And there was a conversation about that I heard in a seminar. If you're living with an alcoholic person, you cannot make that person to stop drinking. Okay, my ex-husband is not an alcoholic. This is like what do you call a analogy, okay? This is the seminar leader talking about an analogy. If you're living with an alcoholic person, you cannot tell that person to stop drinking. That person has to want to stop drinking.
Yes.
Whatever that person needs or is going to do with their life is up to them. But what I can do is to remove myself from the situation. And in that situation with that wasn't the drinking, it was the emotional withhold. The emotional withhold for me was like killing me. And that was for me what I said, like, he's gonna be like that. He had a lot of anger issues, and I couldn't be with anger,
Right.
That I did a lot of work about that, but we talked about in the other episode how being with anger was very difficult for me. So I couldn't be with that. For me, walking away was to walk away from the anger.
Yeah.
And that's something that is very difficult because there's something that I get out of allowing myself to stay in that relationship.
Well, I also think that some people tend to stay in similar relationships to what you're referencing for many reasons. Sometimes kids are involved.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's like for the sake of the family, I'm gonna, sometimes it's this where you feel like this is their low moment in life and I'm gonna see them through this,
Mhm.
So sometimes, it's with good intention and good heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then other times it is, I don't want to look as a failure by walking away from it. I don't want to be perceived as somebody who gave up or weak in the eyes of anybody looking, observing us. So there's many reasons, and it's hard. And typically, my recommendation is never go through a situation like that alone. Talk to somebody, because getting a perspective from somebody else who loves everybody involved, especially when alcohol's involved. That's a
Yeah, but remember, he was not an alcoholic.
Oh,
It was just an analogy.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I had a situation at work a while back, a long time ago, where I kept seeing myself in a codependence situation. And there was a episode that keeps repeating itself. One time, I said to myself, why do I keep myself locked into this manipulation? Because there was a conversation that I will bring it up, the other person will have the same response, and then I will back off.
Well, and on that note, one of our last things is neglect and manipulation. Emotional needs being constantly disregarded, and manipulation keeping one partner in a state of compliance or guilt.
So I think I can share this because, the other person was doing what the other person was doing, and that was that in particular, that relationship was going on for many, many years, and there was a lot of good things that was coming out of it. But then it got to a point where every time I would bring something up, I was left with this feeling of guilt, was my fault, and I felt like, why do I keep myself in this situation?
Yeah.
So I said, the other person is not going to change. The other person is there because I allow that person to be there. I need to alter. I need to change something and transform something in me.
Yeah.
So I went, and that's where Landmark comes in handy.
Yeah.
I went to no, I'm going to transform this conversation about me being a leader. It was really related to me. And then once that happened, I did the work on me. I prepared myself. The next time that happened, I said, no, this time I'm going to take action. It's not my fault. And we're going to end this relationship.
So there was growth.
There was a lot of growth.
A lot of growth. And I think many women might stay in that type of toxic relationship because they think that this is as good as it's going to get.
Could be.
Or this is what I deserve, or I am somehow, and I'm not necessarily saying the partner manipulated them to thinking it's their fault, or this, since you that have the issues. I think some people, they bring that into the relationship with them, In this case, speaking of the woman, like they're damaged, they've never healed from a past failed relationship, so they bring that forward and they're thinking, like, I'm not going to let this fail again. I've got something to prove here. And so,
and this is like something that I recommend to people that I do for myself. If I see something, keep repeating, which what we call a vicious circle. There's a vicious circle, like I'm trying to get out, but it keeps happening. Even with different people in my life, I'm the common denominator. If something keeps repeating itself in my life, I need to go and do the work.
Well, you could be the common denominator because of internal issues within yourself, or because you are attracted to that type of individual. Something that is like you can't, it's
there's
like,
a codependency there.
There's a codependency, and there's sometimes we are attracted to really what's not the best option or choice for us.
But the codependency comes from a need or a repetitive
behavior
or pattern or limiting belief that I have about me or others that I keep in place.
Right. And I think that's, it's so important that we have to always look inward. And it doesn't necessarily mean that's because we're guilty of something. It's just we need to identify these issues in us. And we're going to get to a moment as to, by staying in these kind of relationships, what's the long-term damage and effects that can result in it. So the signs that we just discussed can have profound effects on your mental and emotional and physical health. And they can lead to increased anxiety and, of course, depression and a diminished sense of self-worth. And it's essential to recognize these signs and then take the steps to address the issues or leave that relationship. So let's talk about some of the long-term effects that stem from staying in a toxic relationship. So go ahead, hon. I'm going to let you take some of these.
I think the one episode when, you know, something was happening and I catch myself allowing something to happen, and I realized that I was okay with it because I had in my mind that I was an adult, that I was okay with, you know, with the consequence of me being in that situation. But when I realized that was impacting my child, and that was, you know, my girl, my little girl, I would, who cares what I was saying to her? She was watching me, allowing that codependency to impact and create suffering. So who am I to tell her to go get a great life when I'm not living the...
You're always the mentor, the example that you set for your children.
So,
even just by observing
yeah,
how you respond to toxic relationships.
Yeah. So I think that as we grow older and we become responsible for the impact that we have in our environment, even if you don't have children and you have other people around you that look after you, right? Like, unless you're like inside of the TV all day long, you interact with communities and you make a difference.
Yeah. So staying within those relationships where they could be classified as toxic, it can create an erosion of self-worth over time, even subconsciously. I mean, you may not even be aware of it, but the constant belittlement and disrespect from your partner can gradually chip away at your self-esteem, and it leaves you with a diminished sense of self-worth. And I see that in a lot of young women in their like second, third relationship. They're just, you know,
especially with, you know, this thing about the social media. It's very sad because when I grew up, there was no cell phone. We play on the streets. We had to deal with people. We had to deal with conflicts, right? And I already have problems of, like, you know, codependency that I'm working and I work all the time to, you know, be responsible. How about like those kids today that doesn't really have that much of interaction with other people? It's just this fancy fake word that everything is perfect in the internet. I don't post anything when I'm down. I post just when I'm happy. Right? But then the impression is that my life is glue, you know, fancy all the time, happy all the time. Look, I have a great life and I do create joy all the time. Even when I have downtime, I ask myself, what is this an opportunity for? But I don't keep posting the downtime. How do you relate to, like, how you create that with teenagers when they are building up their character, they're maturing their emotions, and they want to belong?
And that kind of leads us into number 2, also touching on what you brought up, your daughter, your son, you know, and what they're observing. Because on number 2, difficulty, the damage that can come from staying in a toxic relationship, especially when children are observing their parents or their parents' relationships with maybe not their spouse, but, you know, boyfriend or girlfriend, is they start to form healthy, difficulty forming or distinguishing a healthy relationship versus a relationship that they learned or that they know, either from observation or just constantly repeating the same pattern. It becomes hard for them to know what it feels like to be loved in a healthy manner and to, you know, be in a healthy relationship. And that's all due to negative experiences. You also may become suspicious of others' sincerity and struggle to accept genuine love and acceptance, undermining your chances of future happiness. I call that self-sabotage. That is because you just don't trust. You don't trust any longer into that you deserve a healthy relationship or that you're worth loving in a healthy manner. So you end up pushing it away or sabotaging it before it can hurt you again.
Yeah, and as you're talking, maybe I'm a little bit off, but as you're talking, something came to mind about what we were saying earlier, that when you have this pattern of growing up and you're surrounded by those situations where you are not acknowledged, you're not elevated, you're not supported, and you stay in a relationship like that, you're perpetuating the behavior of codependency to your children, and you keep in place.
Yeah.
So when you have courage, because it takes courage, and it's not easy, it's a lot of work to be able to get out to those relationships.
It is.
But you break the cycle,
Yeah.
and you impact all the generations coming after you.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is I've heard women say, he, like, when something to everybody else it looks healthy and like, this is a great man for you, no, he doesn't engage with me, they're like, it's boring, because they're so used to conflict. They become conditioned to conflict that they are like bored with things that are very stable. It's like they don't thrive in that kind of environment. You have to kind of reprogram their whole thought process, which, by the way, you can get that from another episode.
What is
How
it?
to change the framework.
Oh,
of
yes,
process.
yes.
So it can also lead to development of mental health issues. Toxic relationships can contribute to or worsen conditions. Like depression, anxiety, PTSD, leading to detachment. Sorry, guys, self-harm, and inability to carry out daily tasks.
Can you tell something about you? Like, what do you see, without bringing up any relationship in particular, but do you see like you have learned from it for you?
I'm sorry, repeat your question.
Do you see anything that you got challenged throughout life, and then what pattern did you broke? How were you able to break the pattern and get out of the codependency?
So there is instilled in me the sense of loyalty, and that means till death do you part. Because of being a spiritual woman, a religious woman, I believe once things are united before God, that God is capable of healing all things. But what I failed to understand early on is that that will has to come from both partners. Not just my will is not strong enough to change the will of another individual. Only God can do that. But the person has to be a willing participant.
Yes.
And so I would stay in relationships, not many of them, and I don't want to name any particular relationships, with the intention of remaining loyal, because I know with work things can be healed, and with God things can be healed, but it takes two, right?
Yeah.
It takes two to make a relationship, it takes two to break a relationship. So I think I still struggle with that today. Basically that summarizes it. Just thinking that, not that my love is strong enough to heal everything, but if the person isn't in it, they're just not in it, and I have to be able to walk away.
It's like what the seminar leader said to me once. If the person wants to continue in that pattern, there's nothing you can really do about it, because it's the way I see God and the way I see is probably similar than you. Like, that is with them and God, not me, them, and God.
There's also another part. There's a part B to what I just said, and I want to say this because I want to be transparent, because I think by sharing this vulnerability or the weaknesses within myself, hopefully hopefully somebody, just even one person, will identify with this and say, yeah, you know what, I do that too. Because I am not perfect, and because I make mistakes, I'm a contributor to sometimes the toxic within a relationship. And I keep trying to make it right. So I don't want to give up, or I want to take accountability and then try again. And I'm not strong enough to stop that pattern, whatever it could be. So when I recognize that there's fault of my own that causes these indifferences between us, I keep wanting to do better because I know I can, and I just keep falling.
But isn't that part of the guilt feeling? Because that's what I recognize. I had the experience of feeling guilty that caught me and stay in the codependency.
Right. Well, there's two matters to the situation. At some point you have to say, either this person helps me grow or this person prevents me from growing. And you don't want to become a victim to your own sabotage.
Yeah.
And so yes, and so that's part of healing and part of growing. But that is just something I know, and I'm pretty sure somebody can relate to that, is they know who they are, and they know they make mistakes. But at some point you have to say, I keep making these mistakes, but maybe it's also in the way the individual responds to them, you know, because partners should help each other grow. I really believe that. Good partners, like any business, a business evolves from not just one of the partners. It's both partners adding their strengths. And working together.
Everyone has to participate.
Both contributors. Yeah.
Here's one thing that, as you're saying, I want to bring it up. Any conversation that it was done to me, it was done to me, it puts me in a position of victim. And if it was done to me and I'm a victim, I have no power. It's like, this is language. When I shift the language to this happened and I took it to me, now I got the power to not take it anymore. So you can start by then. You can start by, wait a minute, this is happening, this person is doing what is doing, where do I allow to happen? Where I can be powerful here. That's the beginning. Because when I look it back and I see, even like today, when I see like, okay, where is happening, where I'm allowing this to happen, from power, not from being a victim, that's when I start changing that relationship.
Sometimes it takes a while to get there, guys.
It takes support. I have a lot of support.
Right. So also, staying within toxic relationships can also lead to increased physical health problems, and the chronic stress and negative emotions associated with toxic relationships can weaken the immune system. So it's not just about mental health, guys. It's also about physical health. It can impact that. And then, of course, have you ever done this? When things become, you just go into isolation. You just like, I'm done with everybody. They're no longer talk about it. You just turn inward.
You know what? I don't do isolation, I work.
So you throw yourself into work. Some people do the opposite. They go inward and they say, you know why? Because I don't really want to hear what anybody has to say. I don't think anybody can really help me out of the situation. And they just go inward. That may work for somebody. Sometimes people need to process this.
Yeah, I'm an extrovert and I need people. So distraction with other people makes me getting away of that. But I can see that people go into isolation because they feel disempowered. They feel like they don't have any strength. I don't have any power here. So if I perceive life is happening towards they are doing something to me, then I remove myself from the situation so I don't have to deal with they are doing it to me, right?
Those are great. Those are strong words, but it does take it takes a while to get there. To be able to identify that, number one, that's the hardest task. Identifying it to be your truth, and then number two, doing something about it. Walking away. Walking away can be hard. It really can for a lot of people.
Well, I was talking.
Depends on what you have at stake too. Sometimes They have no option. They're living together.
Mhm.
They're dependent on each other financially too.
Yeah.
There's so many factors.
I was talking to my therapist I do a therapy in Brazil, and I was talking to her today, and she was mentioning about a client she had, and the client wants to grow financially, and the client realized that she was going to her mom for money, even though she was working, she had her career, she was keeping her mom as the place to go for money. And she said, I need to stop going to my mom. I need to find my way. And once she stopped going for her mom for the money, she started growing and discovering her pathway to making her own money. So she grew up.
Yeah, that is a tool, an essential tool right there that you can implement and apply to many aspects of your life. Remove the obstacles, the things that can make you handicapped, like your crutches, and you will be amazed at what you can accomplish. You know, just close that door.
You gotta close the door. I love it that you close the door.
Yeah.
So let's make that a blooper. Close the door so you can have a new and empowering relationship coming to the next door.
Yeah. So let's talk now. So we kind of addressed all the different type of things that can stem from remaining in a toxic relationship. Let's talk about some steps to help you rebuild your self-esteem. Be kind and patient with yourself. Recognize that healing takes time. Talk to yourself with compassion as you would to a good friend.
I think it's very difficult to do that, Christina. I think that some of those tips are really easy on paper. I think that you can't really talk to yourself in a positive way.
Why? Why do you feel that? Why do you not feel that you deserve affirmations?
I'm not saying that I don't deserve affirmation. I'm saying that sometimes we're so into an environment that the whole thing reminds you, but you keep yourself down, that you need to find a way to get out of with some other tools than just an affirmation.
Well, then you know what you do in that case? You find yourself a good friend that will help you to recognize your strengths and the fact that you deserve more. You deserve to be happy.
You know, as you touch me,
you don't like to read.
No, you're fine. Don't worry, that's something else. You can. It's just the arm.
Okay.
Get yourself in a group. Get yourself in a support group.
Groups.
A lot of church. I'm not here to praise for church, but like a support, a spirituality. I have some books about Wayne Dyer that I listen on YouTube when I'm down, because like on your own, sometimes, most of the time, it's very difficult on your own.
Very difficult.
You know, so what practice can you put in place to have your mind to go into those modes? That's really like not just create an affirmation. Create support. Participate in support groups or participate in practices that will help you to alter your mentality.
Yeah, always have your go-to, and create new habits. It takes time to create new habits, but the more that you put them into practice, they just become spontaneous. So identify and challenge negative beliefs, kind of what you just said right here about yourself. Rewrite toxic thoughts as possible affirmations. Like, I am worthy of love and respect. And that's kind of what you kind of didn't agree with, but that I think is important. We don't do that enough. It's not a natural response to a toxic situation. Well, I'm going to pull myself away and then I'm going to start feeling affirmations. No, I'm telling you guys it works. You just need to say, listen, I don't have to put up with this, or the person is a great person, just not right for me.
Yeah.
I need to move forward because I'm worth loving, and as long as I continue to stay in this toxic relationship, I'm never going to find a partner that I'm meant to be with.
Close the door.
Close the door before you open another
But I
door.
think you this thing about creating mantras, right? Like creating affirmations as an affirmation, as repetitive. There was something that I was talking to the therapist today about taking a deep breath, and I use that with massage too. I used that when I was a babysitter. I did that with my children. When something like happened, your mind goes into panic mode and you start like
Oh,
that, right? So take a deep breath
Mm-hmm.
and then think about the breath. Like just take all your thoughts away from everything,
Yeah.
bring it to the breath. And then in that moment, you can like alter the pattern in your brain to bring yourself back into a different
So
pattern.
true, Liliani, really, because we were talking about most people's response, not most, but a good handful of people's response is to go inward, to kind of isolate themselves. But don't do the opposite. Take time, go out, get a massage, go surround yourself with people who are positive influences in your life. Go enjoy a movie, a meal, something to just take your mind elsewhere. It allows you time to process everything. You know, I've always learned that something that just seems so bad today, in a few days it just hurts less and less and less, even when it means like you've lost $2,000, which I did one time. And I remember, and I'm going to pay this forward to my father-in-law, Doug. Somebody, I think I lost, I don't know, at the time it was like a couple $1,000s. And it hurt so bad. And I remember telling him about it. I said, it's okay, honey. Listen, I know it's a lot of money and it hurts really bad, but trust me, tomorrow it's going to hurt a little bit less, and the next day a little bit less. And then in a month's time, you're going to be okay. Maybe that person needed it or something. I'll get it, I'll make it up somewhere else. And lo and behold, he was spot on with that advice. So I took that advice and I shared it with my daughters every time it was appropriate. You know, I know it hurts today, but I trust me, tomorrow's going to hurt less and less. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's true.
Make a list of your positive attributes and strengths. Remind yourself of your inherent worth, even if you've forgotten it. So again, it goes back to looking inward.
You know what I do about that? When I have a lot of stress, we're talking about toxic relationship, and it's not just that, but like I get myself present to every time I have a client that have a lot of problems, and I'm contributing, and I get myself reminded of why I do what I do. That puts me in a so like empowering mode, empowering energy, that makes it easy for me to have the courage, for me to close the doors, for me to move on, for me to, because in service of others, I want to grow. You know, I can't really grow, like we can't really grow if we are inside of a toxic relationship.
Right. You have to practice what you preach.
I can't make a difference outside if in my own house, in my own person, I'm not saying no to the things that doesn't work for me.
Why don't you read this one here?
Set boundaries and learn to say no, put your needs first and don't feel guilty about it. I think for me the hardest thing is the guilt.
Yeah.
Because I want to have everybody happy. And so, yeah,
that is, and it is hard. Just like this next one, practice assertiveness and speak up confidently for your one's needs without being aggressive. And I promise you, it may take you a while to get to that point, but once you put it into practice, you're gonna find it much easier to do in other areas of your life. Saying no, that's not what I want to do, or no, this isn't the direction I wanted.
Without being aggressive.
Right, without being aggressive, but you're gonna see the people that will respect
but
you.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. My experience is that when you're assertive, people around you, that when you start becoming assertive with the people who you were in the codependency relationship, they don't like it.
The narcissistic personality is not going to like that pushback.
Because you're now taking a stand. You're now saying no. You're now like, they're not getting what they need to get.
No.
And they're not able to manipulate anymore. So that codependency is now you breaking it.
Yeah.
You breaking that.
Yeah.
And it's not fun.
Yeah. You will get pushed back to the level to where they're going to try and turn it on you. Essentially gaslight you at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not gonna, because they no longer can
control you.
Your emotions, your response,
and that's
your behavior.
Yeah, and that's the part where I use a lot of spirituality. I use a lot of mentors, and the knowing that there's a higher force than me, and I deserve to be in empowering relationships.
Right. And then also take a break from that relationship and spend time with people that you find are a good influence for you, that are positive, that are uplifting, that don't necessarily, you don't have to talk about your situation. They're to the point where they know how to make you happy, or just be, just to spend time with. So spending time with people that make you happy and treat you well, surround yourself with positivity and balance out the past negativity. Also, let go of anger and hatred towards your ex-partner. Holding on to these emotions only drains you. And I know that from personal experience. When people say, how are you so forgiving? How could you forgive that? Like what? Because if I hold on to it, that anger festers and it becomes to reshape me into a person I don't want to be. Forgiveness is the first step you need to take to move forward. And you're not forgiving them to like let them off the hook. You're forgiving them for your own personal growth.
Yeah. And the forgiveness gives you peace. When they take it what is theirs and you stay with yours, and you don't need to it's very like empowering when you do the work, when you have the courage to close the door and do the self-development and do the self-growth for you to be able to stop the cycle. It's nobody else's job but yours to do the work and to complete. And you pretty much, the remaining few tips that we had, you pretty much just summarized it in that one statement there. It's allowing yourself grace and time. It's making better decisions, and the only way that you make better decisions is by putting them into practice right away. And then leaning on individuals, getting in the support groups and talking to people. Create your tribe.
Creating your tribe. Always love that. Also, understand that it's work. You've got to do the work, right? It's not something that happens overnight. You got always having to put things into practice. Anything that you want to be good at, you have to put into practice.
And you have something about, like, we as women, we have a tendency to have compassion for other people, but also it would make it worth to have compassion for yourself. You have to, whatever you extend to others, you need to extend to yourself as well. Like, I know that I'm an empath. I understand that. I'm very sensitive to my surroundings, to energy levels, to people's situations. I'm always wanting to help, but I also have to help myself, and I have to allow myself time to heal, or to extend the same kind of grace that I extend to others. I have to extend that to myself too. You asked, what is this little quote? All right, so let's close with our quote of today's. You may not be able to control someone's negative behavior, but you can control how long you participate in it.
That was perfect for this. That was perfect for this. So guys, this will be an episode that you'll probably want to come back and watch again and write down some of these tips, but I personally want to hear from you, because this is something I've observed so many times over with people I adore. They are wonderful people, but they just tend to keep going back into these types of relationships.
And another thing, if you need any support, let us know. We'll be happy to interact with you or bring this up in another episode, and
maybe even have you on our podcast as a guest.
Yes. All right, so close the door, put your crown up, and go for it. You deserve it. And with that, thank you for watching us.
Bye, everybody.